Just realised that the sound's not actually coming through. Just realised that the sound's not actually coming through. Okay, let's fix that.
Dollars, not the person who sold the NFT. And this problem kind of exists because, as I mentioned, most NFTs, or all NFTs for this one, are basically links to external storage. They just have a URL on them. Whereas in this case, because the code is there, you kind of consider that the DNA of the NFT, of the asset. And so in my case, what I'm thinking is that most NFTs are deeds to real estate, like deeds to a physical house. The piece of paper is not the house, but it represents. Work or pieces of it. Interesting way of thinking about it. If there's any questions or Patrick or anybody, I'd be happy to stop talking.
I mean, I don't have any questions about it. And I just want to point out that the traditional way of doing NFTs, as like these pointers, as you mentioned, it's not the wrong way to do NFTs that way. right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense for pretty much most of the NFTs that we actually have. Makes a lot of sense to actually, use NFTs as a certificate.
Mm-hmm.
But what we are doing is just, expanding on that concept and figuring out a new way of actually, using these certificates as the medium itself, which is really interesting. But it doesn't really diminish the value of
Yeah.
the other
Yeah.
NFT projects,
The-
because they are totally valid, and that's not the point, I think.
It's yeah. Thank you, Patrick, for saving me from myself. To be clear, I'm not saying other NFT projects are somehow like less interesting or whatever, right? Like it is a very interesting use case to be able to buy and sell and transact and move ownership of an asset unbounded by like physical reality, right? Like that's very interesting. But exactly as Patrick said, like this is the other part of the thing is that I tend to think a lot of people talk about how photography basically freed painting to be more, I don't know, abstract or representational, right? I'm going to give some people some speaking privileges who've been requesting it. And let's see. I think A to Z, you have privileges now. If you'd like to speak, if you'd like to interject, feel free.
How's it going, guys? Yeah, I just wanted to add in that I think, in terms of what you're saying, in terms of the issues surround like that is going on with, I guess, that house where someone sold an NFT, I think there's an issue currently within cryptocurrency as a whole, but within the NFT space of people do not understand what NFTs are, and within not understanding what NFTs are, people do not see the capabilities or the possibilities that they have, whether it is that you put the deed itself, that you're purchasing the deed as the NFT of a house, or in the situation that you guys have did of creating the DNA and being actually able to put that onto the blockchain. And I think I'd be intrigued to see, like, going forward, as myself, as someone who's very much interested in the NFT space, as to how much, I guess, quote unquote, DNA of an actual asset people will be able to put onto the blockchain. Because, as I guess some people here would know, within metadata, there's only so much information or memory that you could put onto the blockchain. Otherwise, it's going to make the blockchain very, very heavy, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of add that in there.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for allowing Patrick and I not to hear ourselves talk. I really appreciate that, and it's a good point. Like so the kind of what Patrick was getting to, and to continue with that like photography thing, we kind of think of this as like blockchain native art because I don't know if you imagine like what are the constraints of painting or different kinds of painting, oil painting versus watercolor, right? Like oil painting can be kind of reworked a little bit. Watercolor is kind of faster and a little bit more, I'd say, permanent, right? With the inability to kind of manipulate it after it's on a canvas. In this case, I kind of view the constraints of a blockchain in terms of size of like what you're actually putting on chain as one of the constraints of the medium, right? So how do you abstract away and think at a kind of high enough level so that with a very simple set of rules you can actually generate something that is of interest to you, right? If that does that make sense? Am I talking any nonsense?
To me, that makes sense, and I think it's something that I've noticed with what you have did is that you have created a new medium, and I think it's very interesting. Like when it comes to like when you say the word artist, some people would have an automatic idea of what an artist is, but now you have with Unsigs, you have created something. Whereas people who are proficient in code maybe now see that, oh, I actually have a new paint here that I can use in some capacity, and I can use that in the blockchain. What can I paint with that? And maybe this is gonna plant the seed for a whole new art movement from coders and programmers to begin to start thinking in that way. And I think it'll be just interesting to see how this pans out over time.
So one thing I'm going to take a step back because sometimes people or Patrick is aware of this too, but like I'm not the first one to use programming to generate art at all, right? This is a very like there's lots of people who have been doing this for 10 or 20 years, and I'm not making any claims about that. But what I think is that like a little bit marrying these two worlds together, and I don't know, in some ways, I feel like that kind of mode of creativity has never really been given the appropriate platform that it deserves. Like I think there's a lot of very interesting work being done in this space, but it's not really taken seriously because it's just math or it's just a bunch of like geeks mashing away on a keyboard. But I think it is a serious form of expression, and I think because of like the explicitness of programming, there's a lot of intentionality and also craft, you can say, or technical skill, not technical skill like in the normal like coder sense, but the same way that like a painter who has like very fine control of their brushstrokes needs to be able to kind of manipulate their tools. Obviously, with programming, that's kind of evident as well. And I feel like one of the interesting things about NFTs is, of course, is like you have access to like global capital flows, where like anyone in the world can buy something from anywhere else in the world, right? Like I was really interested. Can you talk a little bit, Patrick, about where you've noticed the traffic is coming from on the Unsig website? I think you sent me some initial kind of interesting graphics.
Yeah, I actually haven't looked in like the past 2 days or so, but I noticed that many people are buying from the UK
Mm-hmm.
actually, and I mean there was also some traffic from Japan and Germany, of course, but surprisingly, I mean I would think that the traffic from Japan and Germany, because of simply us two, which are basically always on the page, would be a lot higher than it is. And Japan and Germany are only like ranked 8 or 9 or so, and the US, of course, is ranked 2, which is also very surprising. I thought that the
Yeah.
US would definitely be rank 1 because it's always rank 1.
Yeah,
Um,
I've never in all the websites I've ever put out, I've never seen a distribution like this where the UK is in the lead and whatnot. So it's kind of interesting to me how the
yeah,
breakdown.
it's very interesting, and
I,
it's very global. It's
yeah,
surprisingly global even. I think there was also a lot from Brazil somehow, and
yeah,
from many like exotic places, which I didn't expect to be into like NFTs that much. I expected it to be very Western focused, of course. I mean, US, Germany, UK, and stuff like that makes
hmm
sense. But yeah, I think it's a testament to how decentralized and global the whole crypto and Cardano scene really is.
yeah. I mean, my the way we met was initially my monad pool map thing, which shows the decentralization of the Cardano network, and I almost am a little bit proud that I feel like the representation that I've seen, at least in the updates you sent me, seemed even more decentralized than the Cardano network is, right? And
Definitely,
that
yeah.
made me quite happy that we seem to be reaching out, and it's hard for me to tell from the names of people in the chat. I see an Aussie pool. I'm guessing I know where they're from, but uh, if anyone wants to kind of explain where they're from and what drew them into the project, I'd be really um, happy to hear. We've got some comments on Twitter. It's
I think Kay wants to speak
okay.
actually.
Go for it.
Hi. Hi guys. So what originally I found you guys being in another group like this, and I had a chat with you the other day, and it was really neat because I went on, on YouTube and started looking at some of the videos, and I was watching one of the videos and I was like, this reminds me of you guys, and it was explaining the artwork from back in the day, and then I realized like 2 seconds later it was you guys, and I was like, oh, I'm freaking blonde, okay, whatever. But what I think is really neat is the fact that you're able to take mathematics and like what you're doing and you're making artwork out of it. It makes me think of sacred geometry. It makes me think of like frequencies, and I don't know how you guys do what you do, but there's just so many different things that I think if you could plug this into your little computers and create artwork out of it, I think it would come up with some really interesting NFTs. And the reason why I'm so interested in NFTs, being a content creator, I have a lot of, well, on Instagram, I have a lot of followers. I get people making fake profiles. I get people stealing my pictures. I also do sell content myself. And if there's a way that I could have my own NFT, so to say, which I just went on your website. I'm taking a peek on there now. I think I could have more control over my brand, and as opposed to these people who are stealing my stuff, making money off of it, they're my followers unfortunately sometimes believe these people, and I just think that this might be a good space for people in the content creator, influencers, whatever brand you have, that this could be a way that you can really make it your own.
That's really
And
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, and that's what
Yeah,
I kind of
I
wanted
actually have a
to. Oh, I just kind of wanted to know your guys' thoughts on that, because, like I said, I don't know nothing really about the whole NFT space. I'm learning this as I go. But I really think that I could benefit from this, and I think a lot of other people could benefit from this as well. And I just don't think it's fair that we work so hard on our content and the things that we post, and people are just able to steal them. And that's what made me think of it when you guys were talking about the guy with the house situation, and going to court and all that stuff, and who really does own your content, and the websites that we use, they take percentages as well. And it just made me think that this could really branch into something that I could be more a part of and use this for myself and my brand as well. And then also too, I know you guys said something about like being on YouTube and your followers interacting. Let me tell you, I have a lot of followers on Instagram, and it does not mean they're quality people. I would be more happy with having 1/4 of the followers I had, and they were actually genuine, real people like I've met in the Cardano, community. And that's why I keep coming back to these, because I just feel that it's a positive group of people. And I think it's funny when you guys say like nerd or like things like that, because to me, I think that stuff is so cool, and it doesn't. I don't know. I think this stuff is just so interesting and so amazing, and like don't downplay that stuff. Like it's really cool what you guys are doing.
Well, I think
maybe you're
nowadays,
just a nerd.
yeah, you're probably a nerd. I think nowadays geek has a kind of cachet to it, right? Like you have a lot of people who are quite. Maybe when I was in middle school, I could get picked on for being a geek, but I do think this is our turn right now, and
Yes.
I embrace it and I'm proud of it, and yeah, I'm just quite happy. I think what you're saying, the interesting thing to me about unsigs is that or NFTs in general, let's say, is that like I didn't really understand what an NFT was for a long time. Like you have ownership, but anyone can see it or use it, and it's quite interesting to me, like everyone who's bought NFT or an unsigned algorithm, like you can go on our website, you can view it all, and you can download all of them and you can print them out. You don't have to buy them. But we have these people coming in the Discord who are like, I want to own that one. Like, please, the person who owns this one, please sell it to me. And like, it's a kind of amazing thing that I'm trying to like unpack it and understand what is it about ownership that is so interesting to people. Obviously Patrick and I are benefiting from it because people want to own ours, but that's maybe something I do want to touch on is like I haven't seen anyone sell an unsigned algorithm yet. And I made these two channels, trading, and then I made this unwanted channel in our Discord. I'll explain why I made unwanted. But I thought, and my perception was, because I have friends who participate in like Cardano Bits and these other things, that people bought these as raffle tickets, hoping to get like a zombie or something. My one friend paid 50 ADA for a Cardano Bit. He sold a zombie with a VR head mask for 18,000 ADA, and another one for like 3,000 ADA. And like that was my understanding of why people bought NFTs. And so I'm really interested in what's happening here because I think the set of people that we've attracted into the unsigned algorithm thing is kind of a different set of people. And it's just an anecdote, but the number of people who have commented on Twitter like, this is the first NFT I have bought is a really not small portion of the audience. And I think there's something behind that. I have my own ideas why, but I would really like it if one of you guys who is a first time NFT buyer, guys or girls, could guys or women, could men or women. Sorry, I'm very dumb. Could explain it to me a
Wow.
little bit.
Stop calling yourself dumb, man.
Yeah, politically not savvy, correct, whatever. My wife keeps telling me, don't say ladies and gentlemen in your posts. You're gonna get canceled. I'm like, okay.
Can I chime in there? But I'm
Yeah.
not a. I
Yeah.
will say that I'm not a first-time
Uh
NFT
huh.
buyer, and I think yes, there's definitely people who are in the NFT space to flip whatever NFT that they purchase. There's no denying that. But I do
Hmm.
think there is this thing of like history being written right now, and people wanting to own part of that history. Well, I know that's the case for myself. And I
Hmm.
think of something like an unsigned algorithm. Yes, as you said, anybody could go online and just print them all out. But at the end of the day, there is a way you can prove whether or not somebody owns one or not. And
Hmm.
yeah, you could walk into a house and someone could have all the unsigned algorithms printed up on their wall. But if someone found out and turned around and said, "Okay, do you have the certificate to say that you own these which is basically the NFT," they won't have that. And that is
Hmm.
something that throughout the world, there's examples of that. If you even look at fashion, where people would buy fake versions of a fashion brand, and you could have the fake version, and it could look just like the real one, but people, if people dig deep enough and try to find that proof of I guess, authenticity, you won't have it, and that in itself is something that is, I guess, is an issue, or something that people would be able to call you out on. So I think that is why people, would go out of their way to own an NFT, even if it's something that, yes, I can just print out off the internet. It's that, yes, you do have the ownership and you have the certificate to say that you own it. And an example I've been given to people or surrounding NFTs is that, for example, Van Gogh, in the house that I live in, there's a print of a Van Gogh. Now, I know that Van Gogh is not real, but the other side of it is somebody else may not know that, but if I didn't have a certificate to prove that, that even further cements that, okay, this is not a real Van Gogh. But if I did have a certificate to prove that, that totally changes the game and maybe changes the value as to which somebody would put onto that. So I just wanted to add that in there, anyways.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, I think I'm working on a white paper with these other two guys who I've been talking with, which we'll try to release soon. But they're more like art people. Like one of them was a gallery director for like a Singapore museum, and according to him, he was saying like one of the main issues in the art world right now is provenance, or like, is this really a Van Gogh? Even if you have that certificate, right? Like, who's to say it wasn't a forgery, or where did this thing come from? And just to jump back to what Kay was saying about how this is interesting to me is that what one thing like I'm trying to understand about ownership, and at least with this is that what's exciting to me is that like it seems like people kind of want to support you when they buy this thing, right? Because like they identify with it, and of course they can use it. But I kind of the way I'm kind of understanding it is like when I was in college, I used to torrent movies all the time because I had no money, I was poor or whatever, and I didn't have access. But uh, around sometime, like it became easier for me to rent them with the streaming services, and I also wanted to like support my favorite directors that I didn't want to steal from them anymore, right? I'm just approving a few people. Sorry, I didn't notice the request until just now. Um, but there's this really I think idea that maybe what Kay was talking about. You have a following on Instagram or whatever. Like people can, if they like what you're doing, they want to be a part of it, and they actually want. It's kind of like Patreon, I guess, that kind of platform where people can subscribe and donate to you. But what's cool about NFTs, of course, is like you're cutting out the middleman in a way, in a strong way, where people can directly support it. And also the other problem that it solves is this authenticity issue. Like if people know who you are and you put out your policy ID, which says like these are all my work is under this policy ID, then anyone else has no claim to the genuineness of the article, right? Like all of your work is coming out under this policy ID. I think it does kind of solve in a way what Kay was talking about of it doesn't solve the stealing because people can still steal, But if you do have enough of like a presence online to like say like this is how you verify the veracity, hopefully someone who's bought like a ungenuine or not issued by you uh, thing can figure that out sooner or later, and then future purchases
That
can be
that's
done through you.
that's actually a very interesting thing, the whole authenticity thing, because I feel like a lot of people have that like wrong mindset about NFTs at the moment. Um, I used to follow a lot of like traditional art accounts on Twitter and like 3D artists and stuff like that, like non NFT people. And the art scene at the moment is very split. Like there's just a half that absolutely loves NFTs and sees the potential and all that stuff, and the other half basically complains about NFTs. First of all, because ETH NFTs are really damaging to the environment and stuff like that, but also because there are many bots on Twitter nowadays, which just go on there and grab like images from artists and
And
put
then
them onto random NFT marketplaces.
yeah.
And the problem here is that it's very hard to prove which NFT is actually legit. I mean, the way it's done or being done right now is actually very centralized, which is not ideal in my opinion. I mean, in the end, how do you prove that an unsig is actually like a real unsig? You go to our website and you search for the policy script and for the policy ID, and then you can look that up and match it, and then you can easily see, okay, that's a real unsig. And it's the same for Spacebuds. It's the same for the Hoskinsons and all that stuff.
It's not the same for
But
Dead Pixels. sorry to butt in.
No, please go.
is it not?
Okay, so first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Adrian. I have had some a private conversation with Alexander on Discord about a future collab. By the way, Alex, I have not forgotten about that. I'm gonna get back to you.
I'm looking forward to it.
And this conversation is like straight up my alley because the things that you actually talked about up until now and this room is are basically addressing an array of issues that everybody faces when it comes to NFTs. So I'm gonna take them one by one. So first of all, we're talking about NFTs and sort of the perception of NFTs as digital art versus somebody who just goes out and prints it, in a physical format, like you actually posted earlier today, which, by the way, I think was very beautiful and very flattering. And it's sort of I think that at that moment it sort of splits the art into two, I guess, and it's sort of a let's call it a underlying asset to the actual NFT, the print itself. But at the end of the day, the NFT itself holds the authenticity of the digital art, because I guess you guys, as well as me and everybody within the NFT space, is into the digital art space rather than into the analogical art. And obviously, when smart contracts come to Cardano, I guess we're going to have a sort of a proof of ownership on physical assets as well. So I guess this is one thing. And I want to talk about the digital aspect itself, because that's where the proof of ownership actually begins. And another problem that I want to touch upon is the user experience problem, which Patrick actually, you hit the nail on the head with this one, where you actually stated earlier that it's very difficult to actually prove that you own the NFT, because it's what I like to call the wallet to asset user journey, where you actually have to go into your wallet, find the asset that you want to prove that is yours, and then go onto a third-party website or a marketplace or whatever, and then search for it, and then give somebody the link where the website says which address it belongs to, and so on and so forth, probably a Explorer URL and stuff like that. Now, what I actually wanted to set out to do, and basically Dead Pixels is, amongst other things, is actually a POC of this concept, is, I don't know, to put it plainly, somebody, I think AZ was actually talking about a Van Gogh or something. Imagine that you actually found like, this super cool painting, whatever piece of art on the street, and you took it in. And the fact that you actually took it into your home doesn't mean that you actually own it, because this is like a super meta example. I'm obviously talking about digital art right now. I'm not talking about a real piece of art, but I'm just trying to give an example so that everybody understands, especially non-technical people who are probably on the call. The fact that you actually take it into your home and display it on your wall doesn't mean that it's yours, and you actually can prove that. And imagine like flipping the painting, and then on the back of the painting it says who the actual owner is, who the creator is, and also it also gives you the option to actually purchase that asset from within the asset itself, rather than just going to a marketplace and placing a bid, or paying, I don't know, fees to the marketplace owner, and so on and so forth. And that's what I set out to do. And actually, Dead Pixels, as I mentioned earlier, is like a POC, because unfortunately there's no smart contracts on Cardano, so you can actually do that. But what you can do is actually, if you go into a Pixel NFT and just double tap it, it will display its stats, which is embedded within the actual NFT, because the NFT itself is actually a web page, which holds all the visual information, all the rarity information, and so on and so forth.
I love that about what you've done. Is like, for me, the most unsatisfying part of, and again, I'm not throwing shade at other NFT projects. It's like the staticness of them, right? Like here we are in like a digital format where almost anything is possible. And what do? We throw static 2D, maybe an animated thing on the chain or on IPFS, and then we link to it. Like, I really like this format where you've embedded they're just HTML, right? Basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. It's like a static web page, right? You're doing this in like React, or what? What are you? How are you doing that?
No, it's actually a framework that I made myself from scratch.
Oh, cool.
So
very cool.
So it's not anything third party or stuff like that.
Yeah, that's very cool. But and I love the interactivity. I think your project is really interesting. But there's still the question of authenticity.
So I have an idea for
that you fully.
So for Kay or for other people, I think this is solved kind of by like Crypto 101. And I know the user experience is horrible because I've never figured out how to use it. But like just PGP keys, right? Where what is Charles? I believe that's what Charles has on his Twitter profile, right? Is like his public key. And so a policy ID is controlling, like, this is an authentic thing of this type. But one of the ideas that I had, which I didn't implement because I'm nobody and it doesn't really matter, but you could actually in the metadata sign the contents of the metadata with your PGP key, and it would generate, if you included that as a field in the metadata, then everyone would be able to know that you, like, if I have a publicly available online PGP key, that I was the one who generated this how do you say this piece, right? And that could be consistent across pieces.
I actually thought about, I actually thought about that when I set out to do this project, and the problem that I had with it was more of a programmatical nature, because that would mean that you'd have to interrogate the blockchain each time you wanted to access that information.
Well, so what I'm thinking of here though is, like, I have a set of metadata that is a how do you call it, an unsigned algorithm, right, for each one. Yeah. And what I'm saying is not off chain, but I look at that like JSON or that thing, right? Or even just a single field in it, and I sign that with my PGP key, and I put that, the result of that hashing function as a field. And anyone can verify that input was signed by my public key, and they can know that I'm the one who put it out there.
And that would happen on chain, obviously.
Well, it would be stored on chain.
That's already happening. That's not something we need, because that's exactly what's happening right now with like every single NFT.
No. But this is what you don't understand, Patrick. That's happening at the policy level within a collection, right?
Yeah.
So, but like in our case, you are the one who is issuing the unsigned algorithms, right? Like you're minting it, right?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So if I didn't trust you, which I do, you could add pieces to the unsigned algorithm collection without my permission, right?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
And
so
I mean it's not really necessary to put the PGP key or sign anything in the metadata itself. You can just extend the policy script and sign the policy script with more than just 2 or 3 keys.
But here's what I'm saying is that across collections, right? Like let's say there's I'm an artist.
You can use the same
key, of course, on the same policy, on different policies.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't really matter if it's your PGP key or your wallet key, right? And the interesting thing, in my opinion, is when we get like a step further, because you can still hack your Twitter account or Charles' Twitter account, for example, and exchange the PGP key. But what's really interesting is when we get to the point where all these know your customer information gets onto the blockchain, like for example Atala Prism, where you have like a privacy conserving way of actually proving that you're a real person and that you have a passport on the blockchain and stuff like that, and all these things that are happening in Ethiopia right now with Cardano. And when you connect that and have like this digital passport that's always with you and that you will never lose in your life, and then you have like this identity on the blockchain, and you connect that and sign everything with that in the policy script, then that the problem is solved. But we're still not quite there yet, in my opinion, and it's still not very decentralized. But we're on a good way.
Aren't there things like the like MIT registry of PGP keys where people, it's not just about a listing on Twitter, but the number of people you've signed and exchanged keys with? This is a pretty abstract conversation. I don't know how interesting it is for people listening.
That's true. That's very abstract.
Here's something.
It's very interesting. I think a lot about this, actually.
Here's one thing I want to throw out to the crowd is that one of the topics we wanted to talk about was like the hopes for the collection. And this sounds kind of silly because like this is we do not claim that this collection has any utility. But one thing that I've seen happening is, I kind of tweeted this out yesterday, is that and we talked about it a little bit earlier, the people who are buying this collection are not the same set of people who have been buying NFTs. At least in there's some rather famous wallets and personalities in the Cardano NFT community, and I was kind of surprised, a little bit happily, that like we're not in their wallets, right? Like there's one in particular, like the most famous Cardano NFT collector does not own any unsigned algorithms. And that's kind of interesting to me, like, because I do think that we are doing something different, and I do think there's a kind of historical nature to this. And it's interesting to me that someone who's so interested in NFTs, and Cardano NFTs specifically, has chosen almost deliberately not to participate. And to me, that is symbolic of kind of like the complete opposite or different nature of what we're doing. And I actually kind of take it as a compliment. And what I'm trying to get at is that Patrick set this thing up last night where rather than buying 3 unsigned algorithms at a time, you buy 15 of them at a time. And the reason is that like we seem to be attracting some people with rather deep pockets who are what I would kind of term like more traditional art collectors, who are building up these like not insignificant collections of unsigned algorithms. Like I think last night when I tweeted out, the largest collection had 600 unsigned algorithms in it, which is something like 10,000 ADA worth of purchases, which seems like a lot of money to be spending on a piece of art on chain, right? At least to my mind. I don't know if you can speak to that at all. But one of the things that people have started approaching me about is like, have you thought about collateralizing this, like turning this into like a sort of a security that people can borrow against? And that's kind of interesting to me because there's this whole like Freeport art thing that happens where if you've seen movies like what is the Christopher Nolan one? It involves time travel going backwards. It's the recent one.
Tenet.
Not, Tenet, yeah. So the Freeport where they store the art. Thank you. Who shouted that out? Dead Pixels or A to Z. But there's these Freeports, right?
me.
And okay, thank you. Where like it's kind of a tax dodge where you buy like millions or hundreds of millions of dollars worth of art, and because you store it in a Freeport, which is not subject to taxation, you're not actually taxed on the appreciation until some kind of like shady thing happens. And I think it's also a subplot in the TV show Billions at one point. But right now we have these things, and I can kind of see a future where they're selling out actually, based on the kind of interest that it seems like. When you think about it, one person right now, or very soon, is going to own, what do you call it, 1,000 of these. 300 of these is 1% of the collection, right? Is that right? Is my math right? 3,000 is 10% of the collection. 300 is 1% of the collection. Like there need to be 100 people on Earth with the funds available who understand the project and understand, like, I don't know, the kind of not gravity, but like what we're trying to do, and want to be a part of that. And when I think about it that way, I do think there's probably 100 people who get it in the whole world. And when that starts to happen, and we're starting to see that happen because if you go to buy_maxi at the end of the unsig URL, this is live on the website now, right, Patrick?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, like at this endpoint, it's the same as the normal endpoint, except there's no reveal, so you don't get that fun little thing that Patrick worked on, and you're buying 15 at a time. And yeah, it's just interesting to me that, to be clear, this was set up because people are like refreshing the page and just buying and buying and buying, and rather than having to sit for hours in front of their computer buying, just basically expedites the process. And I don't know, there's something very, I don't know, interesting to me about that. It's not really related to the art, but it is kind of related to, I don't know, adoption or people understanding what the stuff is.
They believe in you.
It's bizarre. I don't know that I believe in myself, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I honestly think that sometimes, like when you were saying you don't understand how, like, sometimes people can value something for so much when you have following and sometimes you connect with people, sometimes they just feel that connection. You make them feel good, you bring them joy. Like sometimes people just, and because of that, they are willing to pay more and they see the vision and they believe in it. So it could just very well be that all these people, they see what you see, you know?
Thank you, Kay, for that. I think, Victor, I just granted you permission. I don't know how long you've been waiting. Sorry.
No, I just barely requested. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the project and you guys' work. And to my understanding right now, it's AI that's just art pieces using right now what colors and shades and lines, right?
Not AI, just me, just Alex Intelligence. No,
okay,
but yeah.
And I guess my question is, where do you guys see this technology going next? Like, what kind of additional type of like, do you guys see it using like textures and like like, I guess where do you see this going?
So this is actually in a way a pared down version of what I initially wanted to do. Initially, what I wanted to do was to have them be more dynamic, kind of like what Dead Pixels was talking about earlier. But because there are no smart contracts online on Cardano yet, like I decided to release it as is because I thought that the project was interesting enough and like visually I was happy with how it was looking and what I felt like we were talking about. And but in the future, where I would like to have it go is to have the pieces be much more dynamic because they are generated by code. We can pull in arbitrary information from the world through oracles about like, for example, the address of the owner, where it's at, or how what's going on the Cardano network right now, and that can actually change, right? Like if we take the unsig example, maybe the colors change, or like the lines are changing based on these kind of other things that are going on chain. And there's also this very interesting idea to me that how do you say this? Every time the NFT lands in a certain wallet, it has a new form. Like it could be very subtle or it could be very drastic. But there's something interesting to me about this idea that, like, let's say that there's the Mona Lisa of NFTs is following this kind of paradigm, right? We might pay the owner of that NFT to not sell it, because it's such like a monument to like human creativity and everything that we do, that we don't want it to change. And so, and if you sold it to someone, it would actually, it might not take the kind of shape or form that it had. And to me, that it's kind of like a performance art piece, where we're kind of fucking with the whole idea of ownership and what it means to own something, and do you want to own something, or do you want to be able to appreciate it as it is, and
preserve it.
Yeah. Yeah, like one of the things that got me like really sad in the past decade was when ISIS was blowing up these cultural monuments in the Middle East, right? That things that had survived for thousands of years were suddenly like wiped out by like really, silly ways. And like that was just like it made me very sad. Above, like, in addition to all the other kind of crazy stuff that was going on in the world, that like something that had lasted for so long was suddenly taken out. And I think there's an interesting idea there too that could be represented on chain with NFTs about this. I'm not saying I'm the one who makes that kind of Mona Lisa or that great kind of thing that people just want to preserve, but it kind of plays with this whole thing about how easy it is to change ownership and to mess around with it on chain. So that's kind of one idea.
I have another. So I think that's an awesome idea with the whole preservation of the art, and paying someone just to not change it, and the whole way we send it changes. But also, I was also thinking of like, would there be a way to either incentivize someone to burn the NFT from existence after you've made it into like a physical form?
So I have an idea for them. So that's something the whole collection is called Unsigned Algorithms, because a few things. It's a kind of a double entendre or play on the thing. Like one, the base data structure that makes them possible is this thing called an unsigned integer, which, if you've seen some of the videos, is basically a positive number between 0 and something else. And the funny thing about an unsigned integer is when you count beyond the upper limit of the number, it starts back over at 0. So all the kind of lines and curves in the collection are basically caused by this underlying property of the data structure that I'm using to program them. And so that's the reason I like that, is because it makes explicit like the medium that we're in. We're in programming, we're in the world of data, and just like oil paints are different than watercolor paints, like in this kind of programming environment that we're talking about, an unsigned integer is different than a float or a higher bit integer or something like that. And so what I'm doing is I'm playing with the properties of this kind of boring thing that, like, usually the reason you use an unsigned integer is you're trying to represent a value that can be contained within that range, right? Like if we're talking about days of the year, 365 days in the year, you'd use maybe an unsigned integer between 0 and 512, because it would be a waste of space to represent 0 to 1024. So you can conserve memory by using this smaller thing. But here we're actually like playing with it and kind of making it do something that's unintended. And I lost my train of thought. Why we were talking about this? Victor, help me out.
I was talking about like after
burning
to burn it after if you want to make it to physical and bring it to physical.
So I really encourage anyone who likes what we're doing to just go online and to download it and to print it out. But if they do want to support us and they do like this idea, they can buy some unsigned algorithms and then print out ones that they own. I had this funny idea, and I don't know if I want it to actually. I plan on releasing it, I think, but I don't know if I want anyone to actually go through with it. Where we issue a smart contract that you submit an unsigned algorithm to, and basically, you send maybe like I don't know 500 ADA or something like that, a not insignificant amount of money that is used to print like a museum grade 2 by 2 meter copy of the unsigned algorithm, which I will sign and turn it into a signed algorithm and ship it to you wherever you are in the world. And that to me is kind of interesting. Like, would people actually want that? Or I don't. I think I would
a little bit every time someone did that, because like I like that they're all on chain. I like that the whole thing is there. But again, like I'm kind of trying to play with what does it mean to own an NFT? Why are people doing this, right? And maybe there's a limited, like I don't want to be signing these for the rest of my life, so maybe we limit it to like the first 50 or so, and each time
the price goes up, kind of whatever, to kind of
Yeah,
disincentivize
at that
it.
point you'd have to make some type of like company large scale in order to like process that amount of people who want to actually print it out.
Yeah.
Into
Well, I mean, when I say this, I like to do the what's called a thought experiment. Just imagine like, what if this thing happened, and this whole thing, the whole unsigned algorithm thing, is kind of like one of my thought experiments. And what's really funny to me is that we're having a conversation now about this like idea I thought of while I was like in the tub, right? And I never really expect any of my ideas to like go anywhere in a way, so it's kind of fun. And maybe I'll regret it in the future, but I think I don't know, it could be interesting. I have to actually give credit. This idea was from my mom, who not the signing and the smart contract whole thing, but she's like, oh, these are so cool. I want to put them on my wall. I want to like print them out. And so when that, I forget who it was. It was just happened last night, and I woke up at 5 a.m. So I'm a bit foggy. But I think Jay Jacobson maybe printed this out on acrylic and mounted it on his wall. In a way that
I saw that.
That's just like, I don't know. It's a very nice thing to me, like just as a gesture that in this kind of disposable, cheap kind of online images online, that someone just took the effort to print this out and to like look at it as they walk by, as they sit in their living room. Like that meant a lot to me, because I know it's not, it takes effort and time, and it's not, whatever it is. I think you get it.
Here's like a really cool idea, by the way, related to hanging stuff on your wall.
Mhm.
Like in the future, to have like these digital displays which automatically somehow connect to the blockchain,
Mhm.
and then they obviously you tie your wallet into them, and there's like a super strict identification process and so on and so forth. And then you have like a digital sort of display where you can actually display all the NFTs that you own within your wallet that you actually tied to the display, like
Yeah.
the paintings of the future, something like that, like the Harry Potter stuff.
So when I saw that acrylic print, it made me think that I used to shoot what's called like slide film on like film cameras, and when these have a light, slide film is not like a negative. A negative, you print by, it has a reverse color stored on it, but slides have this like beautiful color quality to them because you have to project light through them, and they're stored as a positive image rather than a negative. And like the kind of colors you get on them is just like incredible. And so when I saw that he had printed that on acrylic, like he needs to throw that on what's called a light table, like a diffuse, evenly lit light source, and it's just gonna pop. It's gonna be insane. And I've been wondering, like, what is the appropriate medium for displaying these? Is it on like an OLED TV, right, where the colors are just so kind of vibrant and there, or is it like a projector, large scale, like a 3 by 3 meter kind of giant version of it? Because I do think when I've been looking at these, it's funny. I'll look at them on my computer monitor, which is like a 32-inch 4K monitor. It's okay. And when I'm looking at like maybe 100 of them on my screen as thumbnails, they are a little bit uninteresting in a way. Like they have something for them, but they're not quite so engaging. And then I click on them and I take them full screen, and the things that didn't look so interesting to me before, like as you look at them individually, one on one, in a much larger size, like I haven't found what I don't like, even in colors that I like despise normally. And so I do think that this kind of piece scale benefits it immensely, right? When you kind of are confronted with it in a large thing. So I think projection could be pretty interesting. If anyone has a home theater projector at home and can take a little, go through their unsig collection on Pool PM or on our website, that'd be very fun to see how that looks. To see like a giant unsig.
Speaking of,
AZ?
sorry to cut you off. Speaking of projection, I'm a DJ and I've thought about when things open back up over here, where I am like projecting unsigs like at the back of like my DJ sets. I think that would be pretty sweet. Like at the end of the day, they're my unsigs, and it'd be sweet to like incorporate them into one of my DJ sets.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this would be like a perfect dance hall scene kind of thing. I would encourage that. And just when you do, include like a QR code to our website or something so people can go check it out later. That'd be nice.
I'll take note of that.
Anyone else in the audience? We've had a few people, who have permission to speak. If they want to add in something, I think I'm all talked out finally.
Really, that's impossible. Yeah. So a few points. Yeah, and yeah, just first and foremost, thanks you guys for actually putting this idea out in the world and for having this spaces as well. One of the things I like is about this whole community. I think some people kind of touched on it, which is there's a difference, right? First and foremost, I am a first time buyer. Unsigs was my first NFT.
Amazing.
And for good reason, right? The so far, like the whole the provenance thing, right, which you've touched on, for me was just really off-putting. It was only until I came across like this idea that you're working on, and I was like, okay, I finally feel like, okay, this makes sense. It's the equivalent of, so far it's just been fiat. The NFT implementations have been the equivalent of fiat, where you have to like trust in this third party, and then finally now there's like the crypto version of of an NFT kind of thing, where it's like, for like a word, quote unquote, trustless.
Can you explain that to people? Because I haven't been able to do it correctly. Like what makes you say that unsigned algorithms are the crypto version? Crypto is to fiat. Unsigned algorithms are to like normal implementations of NFTs.
I'm not sure whether I can be able to actually distill it down better than you already have. For me, it comes back to this idea of provenance, which is as as you've touched on, touch wood, hopefully not. If you were to go away, if you were to die, in terms of the actual custodian, the pipeline of custodianship, right? Like, it's super shallow, right? In terms of recreating the artwork, exactly how you can be able to do that. In terms of ownership of the artwork, like they both live in the same place, right? And maybe this kind of points back to the whole thing of the quarter mil house, right? The renderer and I suppose the person who actually whatever the I think it's like a Fiverr thing, right? Or maybe not Fiverr, because I don't think someone would have done that for $5. But yeah, so that's just sort of my quick attempt at off the top of my head, just kind of distilling that down to that. Another point which I wanted to actually quickly make, if I may.
Yes, please.
Going back to one of the things that you guys were talking about earlier, the cultural art, really, the whole idea of like, why are people acting, what in ways which are perceived to be weird. Like, why do people want that particular ansig kind of thing? You know, and I think there's like, you know, to thinking about what art is from a first principles, and you know, from my definition, to me, art is sort of like a of culture, sort of like you know, the carbon compression, or sort of like like layers. But yeah, sort of cultural distillations, right? So if you think back to like, I don't know, the Last Supper, right? It's you know, it speaks as much about the artist as much as well as the subjects, right? And the culture, right? The what's the word? The location, the religion. You know,
The
it's
zeitgeist, like where we are right now,
and what's that again?
The zeitgeist, like where we are right now in crypto or in the world, or yeah. That's interesting.
Precisely. Yes. Yeah. It's basically a distillation of the zeitgeist. Patrick might you know correct my spelling there. But yeah. So, and for me, what's interesting, coming back to this idea of extensibility, right? For me, like well, one thing you mentioned was this idea of collateralization, which I think is just such a cool idea. And you know, like, you know, the few that I own, I would actually really like to be able to you know, to be able to point to, you know, a piece of art that I own that someone else who's not in a, you know, particularly and you know, like a, you know, financial hardship kind of thing. You know, as you've pointed out, like someone, you know, like the amount 50 ADA to someone, say, in the quote unquote developed world is in the developing world, right? So you know, there's a whole sort of opportunity, but I feel like there. So that's kind of an extensibility, which I feel like would make sense. Another angle is when I look at ansigs, like, you know, artists like James Turrell come to mind, right? And that's obviously like in space, right? So, you know, one of the things I'm looking to kind of mess around with is, you know, taking then, you know, my my ansigs and, you know, trying to extend them into like a spatial experience, right? Maybe experimenting with some VR stuff, and you know, I've kind of pointed to some stuff, you know, to what this means in the context of the metaverse, right? Because yeah, I mean, yeah, the metaverse, you could talk, you know, a whole bunch about game ownership and, you know, identity, you know, kind of like what Kay was talking about actually, right? Sort of like with DIDs, etc. Like how to actually, you know, prove ownership, as well as where the asset lives, right? If those two things are kind of divorced, or, you know, live in different places, that then adds to the difficulty and also to the price of the whole thing. But so in closing, you know, so, you know, thinking about artists like James Turrell, who, for those who don't know, James Turrell is an artist who basically like does a bunch of installations which are interior installations, which are filled with like different color lights, right? So you just kind of like walk through the spaces and you're just
Is he breaking for anyone else?
Yeah,
Can you